The Knicks are in one of the crucial parts of their season. They have they're in the midst of a difficult 5-game and 7-day stretch where they're facing a bunch of playoff teams and some championship contenders, and they had a good start with how they dominated the San Antonio Spurs on Saturday. They now have a game tonight against the Toronto Raptors on Sunday, on Tuesday night, obviously later tonight. And joining me is one of the authorities when it comes to Knicks basketball. Mr. CP, the Fanchise, joins me here live on 40 Days and 40 Nights. CP, you got me.
Got you, man. How you feeling, man? Morning, bro.
What's up? Good to see you, man. Thanks for joining me. This is a special moment, and I'm really excited. We're in the final week here of 40 Days and 40 Nights, where we're doing 2 live stream shows per day, and excited to have CP the Fanchise joining me to talk some Knicks basketball. So, talking about the Knicks, CP, they have a big game against the Raptors. This is a big stretch. What are you looking to see from this team in this 5-game stretch where they're facing some of these top teams in both the East and Western Conference?
Looking to see if their defensive consistency, if they can maintain that. You know, they've been coming in very hot now, number 8 in the league in defensive rating. I think that's a big win for them coming into this season. Obviously, I didn't expect them to be an elite defense just based on the personnel that they have, especially when you're trying to structure a defense around Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. But I always said if they can crack that top 10 and hover around there while at the same time being in that upper echelon top 5 offense, then they can be a legitimate contender. I truly believe that. And as of late, we've been seeing them play some really good defense. If you look at even last week, yeah, they lost to the Cavs in a tough one there, but defensively, they were okay. That Cavs team struggled against that Knicks defense. And then you had good outings against the Bucks. You had good outings against the Bulls, and also just on Sunday in their big win over the Spurs, where they hold the Spurs to lows across the board from their first half score to their three-point shooting. I thought the Knicks defense has been on a string. They've given a lot of credit to Mike Brown's adjustments in terms of simplifying things. And Mikal Bridges talked about in his post-game press conference, helping the helper. That allowing them to be a lot more aggressive because, you know, their rotations are crisp. And the next guy knows where to fill in for someone who's going out there to take a chance and maybe go for a takeaway or help and recover. So overall, I think it's the defense that I'm looking for during their toughest stretch of the season.
CP the Fanchise joining me here live, 40 Days, 40 Nights here. I agree. I think the defense has been really the story of the Knicks season. When they have defended well, they have looked like one of the top teams in the NBA. When the defense has faltered is where, to me, it's affected their offense, where I feel like they don't see themselves getting stops. And then when the ball's not going in, they kind of just pack it in. And we've seen too much of that this season. You mentioned Mikal Bridges and him talking about the defense being important. I thought he had, in my opinion, his best game on Saturday. I thought his defensive intensity and his activity was different than what we've seen from him for most of the season. And then, of course, the shots were going in. But when the shots going in, it looks really good. And he even had some layups, even had some finishes around the basket, which we don't see much from him. I have said that, to me, we looked at Karl Anthony Towns as the guy that has been the whipping boy for a lot of Knicks fans. When things have gone poorly, people have run to him and said that he's the problem. He's the guy they got to get rid of. But I think Bridges' inconsistency has also been a big part of the conversation with this Knicks team. Where are you at on Bridges? Do you feel like he is someone who also has deserved maybe more blame? And do you think that if things don't go well for the Knicks in the postseason, that he may be the guy that is seen as the person that's shown the door, not Karl Anthony Towns?
He's been my X factor last year as it relates to them in the playoffs. He's my X factor again this year because his ability to create his own shot. Yes, you can look at Jalen Brunson as being at the top and on a secondary nature, Karl Anthony Towns. But with Towns struggling to find consistency in this offense, I'm not saying effectiveness because he has been playing at an all-star level. And if you look at the numbers, you look at the rebounds and the double-doubles, he's been doing what he needs to do to help this team win. However, from a scoring standpoint, I mean, case in point in that Spurs game where Mikal Bridges was the high man, Karl Anthony Towns gets 9 shots. So, you know, with Mikal, especially to me, when they're going to be playing those upper echelon defenses, they're going to put the wing on Towns and neutralize him, or they're going to put the wing on Brunson and slow him down. Then Mikal Bridges, especially like, you know, you're going up against Detroit, I got to see Mikal Bridges win that matchup against Duncan Robinson because that might be the most winnable matchup that they, on a consistent basis, that they have out there in the half court against the Pistons. If Asar Thompson, who's been playing at an all-defense level, is smothering Brunson, and then you have You may have a Duren on Towns or what have you. That intermediate where Mikal Bridges attacking Duncan Robinson, getting into his mid-range bag, or also using his defense as he did 5 steals against the Spurs to
Yep.
generate good offense for the Knicks. I think he's going to be vital to their championship hopes.
CP the Fanchise joining me live here on 40 Days, 40 Nights. We're in day 37 of this 40-day journey where I do 2 live stream shows per day. Excited to have CP the Fanchise here, one of the guys I definitely wanted to have on here. Make sure you follow Knicks Fan TV. They do phenomenal post-game recaps, phenomenal interviews, just an all-around awesome platform if you're looking for Knicks content. When it comes to the Eastern Conference, the Pistons obviously have dominated the Eastern Conference for this season. They've dominated the New York Knicks. I think for a lot of folks, we're trying to extrapolate what that means for a potential Knicks-Pistons matchup. Is what we're seeing in the regular season real? Is it going to be a repeat of last year where maybe the Knicks struggle in the regular season but then beat some of the top teams in the Eastern Conference? What is your concern level of how dominant the Pistons have been? Do you really think that the Knicks will have trouble with them in the postseason, or do you feel like this is maybe more of the same we saw last season with the Boston Celtics, where the Celtics dominated the Knicks in the regular season and then, of course, lost them in the postseason?
Very concerned because they offer a formula to me that has always been the Knicks' kryptonite, and that is going up against speedy, athletic teams. And a team that has, in the Pistons, that has dogs from the head of the snake and Cade Cunningham all the way down to a Dennis Jenkins or Javante Green. Every single one of those guys is dialed in. And when they see the Knicks, they see blood. And so, those 3 wins over the Knicks, those are statement games. Those sent the message to the Knicks to say, hey, number one, the Eastern Conference is most likely going to go through Detroit. If you want it, you are going to have to match their physical, match their dog, match their intensity. And so I liked it. I did like that the Knicks were humbled in that way. Is Detroit an unbeatable team? No, I don't believe so, because when it comes to the playoffs, they're going to have to prove that, number one, they have a secondary creator where if Cade is not going, that they can still compensate for his lack of offense. They are a team that can still turn the ball over in the half court. Their half court offense is not all that impressive. Where they are impressive is the fact that they generate more possessions in their takeaways. Their defense, to me, is one of the most elite defenses in the league. I talked about Asar Thompson. He comes to the bench. Ron Holland is out there. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Javante Green. Paul Reed, give him a lot of credit. When he was with the Philadelphia 76ers, he was a guy that you wanted out there when the Knicks were playing them. Now, I'm not so sure. He has improved his game mightily. So, they have a lot of guys there. Give them credit. All of their lottery picks over the last years from Cade on down have leveled up their game. So they're going to offer the Knicks some problems. But as I said, 2 areas where I'm looking to see if they're truly going to be a championship team. Can they find a secondary creator outside of Cade? And will their 3-point shooting translate in the playoffs? They have been a good 3-point shooting team. If you look at the season in its totality, against the Knicks, they've been snipers. So it's hard to say which group is going to show up out there. But if they can't find those 2 things, then I think they can be had.
I want to ask you about these matchups the Knicks have had, particularly against teams in the West. Because what I have seen, and I don't know if you've seen the same thing, is I feel like the Knicks have played with a different sense of urgency when they've gotten to face these top teams in the West at home. Because we saw how they played against the Spurs. We saw how they came back against the Rockets. They had wins against the Lakers. They had the T-Wolves earlier in the year, and they had that overtime thriller with the Denver Nuggets. Do you get a sense that this Knicks team is playing in terms of a postseason finals matchup? Are they playing, in your opinion, with a sense of urgency and a difference, or do you feel like this is something that we really can't extrapolate when we get to the playoffs if the Knicks eventually do get to a final? Because I think we've seen a Knicks team that is playing with a different intensity when they face these top West teams versus some of these teams in the East that they are going to have to face in the regular season, whether it's Boston or whether it's Detroit, but they haven't. It's been different. I don't know if you've seen the same thing.
Yeah. Well, for one thing's for sure is that their intensity and their effort level, it waxes and wanes. We've seen it over the years, especially since Brunson has been here. Not an indictment on him, but just the way that they carry themselves over the course of a regular season. And even in that last matchup against the Pistons, we expected them to come out the gates firing, but that first game, just like the last game heading into the All-Star break, that first game coming out of the break is tricky. Sometimes you might not have your shots falling, as in the Knicks case, and sometimes you're still carrying that Cancun hangover. So we'll see what happens in a playoff series when you're really dialed in on a team and playing every other night. But as it relates to those teams out west, I think the Knicks match up well with like the Denvers of the world. They've matched up very well with Denver and won a ton of those games over the last few years. And so I like their chances going into Denver on Friday. You look at the Lakers, like some of those teams, even though Denver is a prolific offense, and the Lakers, you still have Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves. I think I like the Knicks matchup in terms of, how they match up with those guys, the size factor. When I talk about Detroit having that athleticism advantage, like those teams don't necessarily pose that advantage over the Knicks, the Minnesotas of the world as well. San Antonio does, but I think where the Knicks can counter that is with their size. And that's what we saw on Sunday with Towns and Mitch and even a Josh Hart kind of imposing their will on San Antonio when they chose to put the wing on Karl Anthony Towns. You're going to pay. You have to pay for that. He has to make them pay for that. So I think San Antonio, although they do have the athletes and the wing depth, they lack in size, where the Knicks were able to impose their will there.
When the Knicks made the decision to move on from Tom Thibodeau, there was a lot of question marks about whether or not that was the right decision. A lot of people saying this is a guy that brought you from being one of the worst teams in the NBA to the conference finals. It seemed like this was a team that was improving every year, and you pulled the shoot from him right as it seems like you're on the cusp of maybe getting to an NBA finals because of all the injuries that happened in Boston, obviously in Indiana, losing Tatum and losing Tyrese Halliburton. How have you assessed Mike Brown this year? He's very different than Tom Thibodeau in terms of his flexibility with rotations, flexibility with the amount of guys he'll play, minutes coming down a little bit for most of the top guys. The Knicks are essentially around where they were last year, but a very different team in terms of how they got there. What do you think of the job Mike Brown has done, and how hot is his seat if the Knicks don't get to an NBA Finals?
I thought he's done a good job this year in trying to counter some of where Tom Thibodeau was lacking. For example, when Mike Brown came here, he was working with a clean slate, so we got to see in his rotations a ton of different combinations, trust in guys like Landry Shamet, putting guys out there like Tyler Kolek, Mohamed Diawara for extended minutes, sometimes even starting guys like a Diawara. So you got to see some new ideas that was counter Tom Thibodeau, which to me is never a bad thing. Also, I agree with Mike Brown in terms of deploying a system that is a counter to Tibbs where it's not as predictable. So playing more off of instincts in that read and react style offense, I do appreciate the concept, especially when it comes to the playoffs where you want these guys playing off each other and not with predictable plays that teams can just dial up and be ready for. Because when you look at it, they've already played a Detroit 3 times. In those cases, when you get to the playoffs, everything's out the window. You know what the other team is running. You know all their sets. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, can your best players go out there and make plays? So I like the fact that they brought him in there to try to be a little bit different than Tibbs offensively. Now, as we've seen, it's been a little bit challenging in terms of the players going out there and buying in Karl Anthony Towns specifically. So, like any other coach, you have to meet your players in the middle. You have to make sure that the scheme that you are deploying maximizes their strengths, and then you have to ensure buy-in. I don't mind the friction that we've seen this year. When fans are like, oh man, there's trouble in the house, it's supposed to be that way. You can't expect the guy in his first year with a team with championship caliber aspirations for everything to just be a smooth transition. It never is. Progress is never linear. So the hope is that they peak at the right time under Mike Brown. His ability to be a bit more malleable in terms of working with the coaching staff, that's what they brought him in here for, partly. Right? Tibbs was not that way. Tibbs was, I'm going to handle everything. It's my way, the highway. And as we saw, he was a bit late to deploy some of the adjustments that was suggested to him, whether it's from the medical staff or from the assistant coaches.
Right.
So is Brown going to be on the hot seat? Look, if they flame out in the first round, I would have to say yes. But I think they should see this through for at least a few years here with him. Give him a chance, give this team a chance to build chemistry with him. But ultimately, it's going to be on Jalen Brunson and the players that decide his fate. They didn't want to play for Tibbs anymore. That's just point blank, period. They did not want to play for Tibbs. That's why he was gone. We'll see if they buy in with Brown and how far he takes them.
You say first round. What about conference finals? Or like is that officially where he'll be in the hot seat? Or do you think that as long as they get past the first or second round, he'll be good?
I think that should be the bare minimum. Conference finals. You got to be able to get there. You know what I mean? If you can't get to Detroit, then I think something's wrong. I don't see anybody in this East. Yes, we will await Jason Tatum's dramatic return from the Achilles and the documentary and all that nonsense. That's coming this week. You know that's coming. I still don't fear them. I don't expect them to come back and play at an all-NBA level. You would have to expect them to kind of, limit his involvement here and maybe ramp him up to the playoffs. I still think it's a very dangerous proposition here. But other than that, I don't fear and I don't see the Knicks fearing anybody in this Eastern Conference. When they play at their A game, they're as good as anybody.
CP the Fanchise joining me here for a few more minutes. Awesome stuff from him as always. Again, make sure you catch Knicks Fan TV, the YouTube channel, and all the different social media platforms. Phenomenal Knicks content they do over there. I do want to ask you about a guy who's very much in the Knicks fandom. I'm not sure for the national audience they've been familiar with him, but Mo Diawara, who was not shy over the weekend. Playing a game where you play 14 minutes to get 13 threes up is not something I think I would expect to see from any Knick, let alone Mo Diawara, but here we are. I made this conspiracy theory that other people have jumped onto, but as soon as they made the Jeremy Sohan move, I was like, I think I know what's going on here. This is Leon, and this is Wes, and this is the front office, Rosa, saying, we have this young guy who's on a one-year deal who we are trying to get to stay here, and he is playing well above his skis in terms of what we expect him a 51st pick in the draft, and we don't want to go over this apron now to keep him. So even though you're playing good, Mo Diawara, oh, look, we got another guy who's a little bit older, a little bit more seasoned, and he just happened to take your spot in the rotation. Oh, I guess you're not going to get the contract you wanted, but hey, at least we can keep you on the cheap. I thought that was the gameplay that was happening, but Sohan's kind of addition to the team hasn't been quite as smooth, and Diawara shows every time he gets opportunities that he is still an impactful player. Do you think that Diawara will be in the rotation by the time we get to playoff time? And just what has been your impressions of the rookie from France?
He's been great, man. I was there at Summer League in Las Vegas and watching him, and everybody was intrigued. Like, even though the Summer League team as a whole, they weren't a good team and they didn't win too many of those games, he was always one of those guys that, like, kind of piqued your interest, especially when Dadier got hurt, I believe, in the second game, and you didn't hear from him again, and he hasn't been good at all. But nope. Diawara, man, he just showed some flashes. You're like, okay, this looks a little bit interesting here. And, to see the trust that he has built with this team and with Jalen Brunson, with the coach, Jalen Brunson saying that he impressed him even when they played in pickup. He was a quick learner. And to me, that is huge because, I had a fan in the comment section saying, I did a show yesterday. His fan was like, why are we making such a big deal over a guy who went 4 of 13 from 3? And we've never done this before. What people have to understand is this. Where the Knicks are right now, they don't have much assets. You drafted Pacome Dadier last year. He's given you nothing. You're in a league where depth is value right now. In this pace and space league, these guys are running Indy 500s every night. Guys are getting injured. Look at the injury history.
Yep.
They traded draft picks to go get Mikal Bridges. You have to get diamonds in the rough in your extended bench. It's important. So, yeah, with the 51st pick in the draft, to bring in a guy that's playing better than half of the first-round picks in this draft and giving you value in that spot, whether it's the 11th, 12th spot on your roster, that with that contract, that's a major boost for a team that is trying to get to a championship. So that's why he's getting the acclaim. He's showing potential and contributing right now for a player that many consider was going to be a project. We didn't even know if he was going to come over here from France.
Yep.
So he's been very impressive. He seems to be picking things up very quickly and really gelling with this team on both ends of the floor. Two-way play we're talking about here. And as it relates to the playoffs, that's going to be very interesting, man. The deuce factor looms large here as it relates to Alvarado's playing time. Diawara's playing time. Is Deuce going to come back and be the same Deuce? This is a guy, Deuce left. Deuce McBride, he was shooting like 45% from three. He was having a fantastic season. At the same time, if you look at the bench being, let's say he does come back, you look at the bench being Deuce, Shamet, Mitch is a guarantee. Are they too short from a guard spot? So, I have to think that Diawara, you're going to have to sprinkle him in there in situational minutes. You go into Detroit, I want Mike Brown throwing the kitchen sink at Cade. 94 feet. OG, McCall, 94 feet. You throw in Alvarado, throw some Bows, throw in Diawara. Like, they need to run this kid into the ground to make sure that by the time the fourth quarter comes, he's got nothing left. That's what the Pacers did to Jalen Brunson. So I wouldn't count out Mo Diawara for the playoffs. I think Mike Brown should consider him, offense, defense situations, but you got to use that length and that wingspan for sure to your advantage.
CP the Fanchise, man. One more question before I get you out of here, and thanks so much for joining me, man. This has been phenomenal. Just talk about the growth of Knicks Fan TV. Again, I'm someone who, since I started this journey of 40 days, 40 nights, and talked about how much, I wanted this to be a spotlight for other content creators, people who have been successful in this industry. A lot of the folks I've had have been mostly, radio, television folks, and here you are, a content creator doing this thing that's blown up in this major way. Talk about the importance of independent media and why you feel like your platform has cracked through in a way that many have not.
Critical in this day and age. It's very critical. When I started this platform, I saw the white space, a need for it in terms of, the national coverage. What do you have? You got Stephen A. bloviating about himself, talking about the team, being wrong about it 9 times out of 10. And they're covering the high level of who the Knicks are going to trade. It's always about the big trade, the LeBron and all of that. And whatever scandal is involving James Dolan and finding a way to throw him under the bus. Local level, you got MSG, good. Nothing against those guys. I like all those guys over there. But in terms of the programming, here's the game. Here's 5 minutes post game. And now we're going to run Best of Giants of 1990, Westminster Dog Show. There was nothing in the in-between for the diehard. There was no community being built for the fan, the lifeblood of the sport. And so tapping into that white space, especially in this digital age with on-demand content, long-form, short-form content, we are building community around every single platform that we are on, whether it's YouTube, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's in person at our watch parties. Like, we have communities basically established on every one of those pillars. And so it's been a tremendous journey over these last 9 years. But as we see now, the industry is shifting totally to more independence, more digital content. When I was coming up, everybody was aspiring to join the ESPNs, to join the WFANs. The problem was there was only 1 or 2 spots or none. You couldn't break through. And that was another reason why I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself. Like, why continue to try to push through? Nothing wrong with aspiring to get to those spots, but there was so few and far between. And now we're seeing a tremendous amount of consolidation, companies merging, companies dissolving. You see the Paramount purchase of Warner Bros., potential purchase. If that goes through, there's going to be more changes, more shifts. And so it's why, when you go on my Twitter, I'm imploring people, build your brand up, make content. You have, even if you have a 9-to-5, you have to be doing this to show your value to the world. It's more than just the paper resume is no more. You have to show yourself. There's so many platforms to show yourself, show your value out there, show your personality. There's so many platforms to do that. And to me, that is how you're going to remain relevant in this ecosystem. And now, by the way, is deploying the machines. So you're not only competing with people on a worldwide scale, now the machines are coming in here making content. So there's a lot going on, but I give you a lot of credit. Like when I saw this series that you established here, the 40 days and 40 nights, that is tremendous. That is an excellent start for you, for your fans to see your brand, to know what to expect from you. They know, okay, EJ's coming on 2 nights, 2 days a week. I know what to expect from him. I know what time he's going to be there. I know he's going to be consistent. I know the topics that he's going to cover. Like, this is a great series for you to launch, to really build awareness for yourself. But I say this, it's not only people who are aspiring to be in front of the camera, in front of the microphone, that needs to be making content. The producers, the editors, the graphic designers, tell your story, show your journey behind the scenes. There's one young lady I see that's doing a great job of this. She works for the Rockets. And if you go on her Instagram, I don't remember her name, but she shows you the behind the scenes. Here's us going on the plane. Here's me, here's Boban in the pilot seat talking to the pilot. Here's how I cut highlights to post to the social channels. Like, take the fans behind the scenes. She's building her brand in a major way. And so that's my biggest advice to people. Doesn't matter if you're trying to be in front of the camera or behind. Doesn't matter if you're a fireman. Doesn't matter if you're a lawyer. Everybody should be making some sort of content that is relevant to their field and allowing the world to see them and their brand. Very important.
What a mic drop. CP the Fanchise, this has been phenomenal, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Let people know where they can follow you and find Knicks Fan TV.
Sure. At Knicks Fan TV, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, especially at CP the Fanchise. No R, Fanchise. I'm a fan. So Fanchise on Twitter, X, and Instagram as well. And appreciate the time, man. Keep it going. Great job, man.
Thank you, man. Let's go, Knicks! That's CP the Fanchise. Thank you so much, brother. I'll talk to you soon, man.